We do not do bullshit here, do we?
Not on a Thursday morning.
Not our thing. All right. Phumelele Mashego and Gareth, and you, most importantly. What the hell was that? It was like a demon voice in the machine. All right, we're here to take care of you this morning, look after all the things until your public holiday kicks in, really. I mean...
Isn't it exciting?
Tomorrow
and Monday.
And Monday, which means 2 4-day weeks. But I said it earlier this week, and maybe you agree with me or not, I'm anti these 4-day weeks. People squeeze as much in, but they want you to do it in 4 days. So...
Listen here, it's nice. It's like the beginning of the second quarter of the year.
Yeah.
Started out with a little bit of a long weekend. But it's okay. So it's long weekend, but it's also like a big sporting weekend if you're like a high school boy.
So what's on this week?
There's like rugby, Easter's festival. There's hockey festivals.
I got you.
It's like big.
Now
weekend.
I understand.
It's a big weekend.
So there's this week 4 days, next week 4 days. Then we have a normal week squeezed in, and then there's another short week at the end of the month.
And if you take the Friday off,
oh my God, hang on. Let me just see something quick. I need to look at this calendar because this means
because on the 27th
it means
Thursday.
One normal week.
Yeah,
1 normal week of 5 days in April.
Absolutely.
And then the first week of May is also a short week. So, buenas. You know what? Just take it, because what are you going to do? Rail against the system?
In the 3 years that I actually worked for someone else, I remember like arriving at work at the beginning of the year and looking at the calendar and looking when all the holidays are. I think in that year or the year after, you could take 6 days off and have a whole month.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Of holiday, if you just take 6 days, strategically placed days.
If you're clever about this one, you could probably get at least half the month, maybe even 2/3 of it. So you know what? Smart people have already done that. The rest of us have not.
We've realized if you have not
now.
done it, I'm sorry, it's too late. Maybe next year.
We got a hell of a show for you this morning. There's a lot happening. Kanthan will be joining us for the Burning Platform a bit later on. He will be online, but we'll also have Mmusi Maimane coming to join us. And as you know, he's trying his best to get his party up and running, get lots of people enthusiastic about it for the upcoming elections, as so many other party leaders have. Again, I've got to say crickets for some of the parties. I think we've invited a lot of them. IFP we're still waiting on. Vryheidsfront Plus we're still waiting on. EFF we're still waiting on. Of course, the ANC is never going to come. But
the EFF isn't. I think we had Dada. You remember Dada?
Dada Morero is the only ANC person to come on the show for 5 years.
I don't think you should write them off just yet. I don't think you should write them off just yet. But I do think that the EFF may be the ones we have to write off. But they always have those press conferences.
Right.
They always have those press conferences with the CIC holding court hours.
You know who we invited from the ANC is Fikile. And because I sent him a happy birthday the other day. You saw him celebrating his birthday. Someone said to me,
because he's an April Fool.
Oh, it's so funny. We had a guest on Tuesday with Lebang, and he said exactly the same thing. He said, isn't it hilarious that the Secretary General of the ANC has a birthday on April Fool's Day, and people don't know that that's hilarious? I mean, people haven't connected the dots in the ANC. Anyway, we've got lots to do today. We've also got plenty of useful information from Phumi. She's been doing quite a lot of research lately. She's been looking into all kinds of things, including tweets and fights on Twitter and all kinds of shit going down. What do you think of the Trump indictment?
So listen, I actually stayed at the office late because, New York time, and I was load shedded at home. So I stayed at the office to watch and saw him come out of Trump Tower and do his Amandala.
No, of defiance. The Trump defiance campaign.
Amandala. And then, of course, this is after Marjorie Taylor Greene had said, he was being persecuted like Mandela. So that made sense, right? When he came out and
Marjorie Taylor Greene. Are we going to take her seriously now? Are you kidding?
At this juncture, my friend, don't write nothing off. Don't write nothing off. I also saw a tweet yesterday with somebody saying, since we are comparing Trump to Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are actually. No, they are. Yeah.
Says this is the perfect weekend to see how similar he is to Jesus Christ.
Well, I don't know if you saw this. I thought this might
just
make you
like nail him to the cross and see if he wakes up on Sunday.
This might make you laugh. A friend of mine in America who's very anti-Trump, right? He sent this to me, which I thought, it's a tweet from a guy called Benny Johnson. Says, biblically sized lightning strikes from the heavens over the building where Trump was arraigned. God is not happy with the Trump. Look at this picture. Right?
Yo.
So it is directly.
That is a hectic picture.
I mean, it's quite a, it's obviously a big story in America, but I don't think it affects us very much. Listen, can I tell you what I'm really tired of? I'm tired of the political machinations, because this isn't about Stormy Daniels.
So do you remember?
Does anyone give a shit about Stormy Daniels?
Was it a couple of weeks ago? It might have even been a month ago when we spoke about the NPA and its failing on kind of nailing down various.
Is this where you used the Al Capone analogy and you said they've got to get them on taxes because you won't get them on the big charges?
But and this is and so what I'm absolutely fascinated by watching this Donald Trump indictment and the arraignment and all of these things play out is for 40 years, guys, the first time that there was any kind of charge, 40 years ago, 1985, with 1985, 1983.
Yeah.
For 40 years, all sorts of people have tried with Donald Trump. And, there was even a time where people were just like, this man is untouchable. For whatever reason, he's just untouchable. And to watch this play out in the way that it's playing out, and it makes me wonder, is it because for so many people in lots of positions of power, he was just too unpalatable?
And too threatening.
Is it because of Jan 6? Is it because
I hated him before
all
Jan
of
6?
those things?
You know what? This came about. Remember, everybody was fine with Donald Trump. In fact, MSNBC, the most left-wing channel in America, was having him on every other week. You remember? And then as soon as he got in, they were like, oh, Jesus, what have we done? Right? You know what I mean? This is what's amazing about the whole story. Is it really is just the most extraordinary miscalculation, if you ask me, by the left in America. They thought they were going to get this crazy celebrity in who was Hollywood, who knew all the elites, who was part of the elite, because he looked like that on paper. He'd voted Democrat every year. And then he starts activating this Make America Great Again thing, starts getting the people in the middle of the country who the people on the left and right despise, all activated. He starts going after the swamp. And then you're telling me it's totally coincidental that they tried the Russia hoax, obviously made up nonsense, files about him peeing on hookers in a hotel room, totally made up.
For me, it is incredibly fascinating to watch. The machination of it all, right?
Okay, so let me just resketch this for you. So we got Russia hoax 1, right? Which was actually the guy who was paid by the Hillary Clinton campaign to come up with all that shit. That's clear now. And nobody's even making a fuss of it. It drives me up the wall. It's like when all this COVID information comes out about who handled it best and who didn't and how stupid lockdowns were. And people are like, no, this is fine. I had a whole rant yesterday.
When I leave here, I'm going to listen.
I had a whole rant
yesterday. Did you have a meltdown?
Well, no, I was fine about it, but I want people to be held accountable. We always talk about this show, the Burning Platform especially, and how we have a problem with accountability in South Africa. And it seems that all the people who made the worst decisions during lockdown about the stupidest things, governments all over the world, no accountability. They just carry on as usual.
What do you think that accountability should look like?
Can we get to that in a second? I want to finish this off. Now, the Russia hoax turns out to have been exactly that, a hoax. Total setup, failure of a setup, investigated by Democrats and found to have been made up on the spot by the Clinton campaign and financed by them. And that was hovering over Trump for the first 2 years of his presidency. Then it was the Ukraine phone call, a perfect phone call. You remember? That was all total nonsense. There was nothing there. There was nothing there.
I love it.
The third thing was the first impeachment. Remember, they went after him for that. Again, no substance, couldn't impeach him. Second impeachment, no substance, couldn't impeach him. That included the whole Ukraine phone call. Now they are so they're not going after him for January the 6th, which would be conceivably a better reason. Okay, but they've had that commission, which was one party just completely hysterical, and the other party just stepped out of it. They wanted nothing to do with it because obviously they were partly culpable, but they couldn't get anything to stick. They couldn't lay any charges against him. Now, what are they using? Stormy Daniels?
So,
are you kidding? He paid off a porn star, which you can do as a free citizen. You can pay someone off to shut up. You can make them sign non-disclosure agreements. That's what he did. She broke the non-disclosure agreement. He's already got some money out of her. I think it's $200,000 or $300,000 out of the total that he paid her. She's just been ordered to pay him another $100 and something thousand because she broke the NDA. I don't see how you're going to get this. They're trying to make it look like this was part of campaign finance irregularity.
Again,
it's just so slim for me. It's so slim. If he goes to jail for this, it's like they're asking for a war.
But this is the thing, right? Is it to get Trump to go to jail? Or so if we go down the rabbit hole of this is about the fact that he's running again and it is a political hit job, right? Is it really about getting him to go to jail? Or is it simply about creating so much of a ruckus that even for his hardcore base, he stops being attractive? You know, so
they're not going to be. Well, these guys. So this is going to make them love him more. I'll tell you what's going to happen here, and this may be the real conspiracy theory behind the conspiracy theory: is that the Democrats know their best chance is to have him as the candidate for the Republicans, because you're not going to get more support for him, and you're not going to get less. He's going to get the same number. So to run anyone against Joe Biden, it better be Trump, because he's beaten him before. So it's almost like, and they did this, by the way, they did this in the election last year.
Hope that, I'm still holding out a candle. I'm still holding out a candle that
here's
Joe
another
Biden
thing.
will not run.
And I want to say that you're probably going to be surprised by this, not just the audience, but I am actually falling out of love with America in a big way. I used to be, you know me, I've been the biggest fan of America. I've supported them. I've defended their moves in Afghanistan, Iraq. For all of my adult life, I've been a big fan of America. I've been a fan of the unipolar world since the end of the Cold War. I've been someone who's considered America the cultural pillar of the West, the place where the Enlightenment values came to rest, a place where they developed and improved on democracy. But I'm falling so quickly out of love with America that I can tell you, without even trying to sound controversial this morning, that other countries are starting to look like a more prosperous and interesting bet. And I'm kind of
always been fascists.
No, I'm not turning to the fascists. I'm talking about.
I'm saying America.
Well,
America has fooled almost everyone into believing that they are this shining example of liberty for all and dreams paved in all sorts of amazing and cloaked in all sorts of amazing. Yet they are, on paper, when you go toe to toe, if you check all the statistics, they have started more wars.
Of course. But that's not why I'm out of love with it. I don't mind a country that starts wars, especially it starts wars against people that I think are against civilization.
But also, America is not who they have said they are.
No, it's not even that.
And the fact
Careful, you keep talking here to turn me back to them.
They're not who they've They are. And for me, what we're watching is we're just watching the unmasking.
Okay, that may be true, but what I'm really unhappy about at the moment, what's pissing me off more than anything else about the way America is behaving, and I mean both sides of this equation now. I mean the left and the right. And we've tried to bring as much balance to this conversation as possible, right? And we've had an insane couple of years. Insane. Not just in American politics and world politics. So here's my problem, is they're so busy tearing each other apart in that country at the moment that they've forgotten why the world might once have looked up to them. They no longer stand for the things that they profess to stand against, which is what you're saying too. They no longer stand for the things that they profess to stand for. And the longer this stuff goes on, this backbiting, this ugliness, the more I am warming myself to the idea of a multipolar world. And the more I'm enjoying the fact that there are at least decisive leaders in countries like India and China, in countries like Russia. And I know this is going to piss people off, but I'm telling you now, I'm starting to get very, very uncomfortable about America's role in the world. And I'm starting to feel like they are so busy cannibalizing that I can no longer take them as seriously as I once did.
I'm just going to quickly Google. I think it's Nyerere who first spoke about the multipolar world.
Julius Nyerere from...
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know,
Tanzania.
But it is about the world does need to kind of, I think the world, this is exactly what we need in the world. We need the world to see without too much passion for one thing over another, and look for the things that work and where they work, and maybe we can have a better world without big bullies.
The way it is at the moment, I don't even see America as this big bully. I hate what they're doing internally so much that I'm put off by everything else. Doesn't matter. Unless they tidy up their own house, I can't have any respect for them anymore.
And the thing is, what they are now doing internally is what they've always covertly done all over the world, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They've always done this.
So in other words, the mask, as you say, is slipping. All right, let's leave that alone, because I don't want to spend the morning talking about stuff that doesn't affect us as much as the other stuff, which we may be more interested in. But I know you're a big fan. I'm a big fan of Tracy Chapman. And it was the 35th anniversary of her debut album, which was absolutely magnificent.
And still is.
As a child, I was in primary school. And I like to think I have good taste in music. But if I want to prove I have good taste in music, I will show you the original cassette tape of Tracy Chapman's album, which I still have. Of course, I'm not going to play it because I have nothing to play it on. But songs like Talking About a Revolution, Fast Car, obviously, which is the one everyone always goes to.
Across the Line.
Across the Line. Across the Lines. I love that goddamn album.
We played we were blaring it out in the office yesterday, singing.
Good.
And still, it is a perfect album. It is a perfect album. And to listen to it today, 35 years later, and still have the same emotions. I was saying to Dory that there are very few albums like that, I think. And I'd be very interested to know what other albums, like, I mean, it also got me thinking about Lauryn Hill.
Yeah.
Miseducation.
Yeah, I always preferred her in the Fugees, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. I thought that like she was a bit more contained.
She was a bit more contained.
Because she's a raving fucking lunatic. No, she is. I mean, listen, not that I have a problem with Crazy, because Crazy sometimes makes great music. It does. But that woman, I thought sometimes talent needs like a jungle gym to swing on. And in her case, the minute you let her totally loose, she became, I think, less, not more.
Miseducation is also like Tracy Chapman.
Give me another one. I want to join the dots. Give me one more album.
Let me think. I want to think about a local one. I want to think about a local one.
No, don't think of a local. Don't do this representation thing.
No, it's not representation. Don't. It's the music that I like.
Okay, so in other words,
Thandiswa Mazwai.
Okay, Thandiswa Mazwai. Now,
and her first album.
Now, a lot of people would look at this and say, okay, well, the actual thing that these have in common is not great music, but that they're activist black women. Some people would say. Is that not the common thread? I feel like Thandiswa she was saying things in her music. Not all music has to say things.
Or is it that the music resonated for me, captured a zeitgeist?
I'm feeling like there's a much more obvious link.
No, those albums, I can play those albums over and over and over.
I don't know. I don't. I regard Tracy Chapman as being a top class, forever music album. I don't think Lauryn Hill. I really don't. So let's leave Thandiswa out completely because I feel like you're being patronizing about local stuff and trying to include local.
It's my top one of Thandiswa album. One of my top.
Just get that mic in front of you, please. Turn it around.
One of my top. It's definitely top 3 album, Thandiswa Mazwai.
And someone says, and they both have children with their band members. Thandiswa and Lauryn Hill.
Favorite story about Tracy Chapman, who doesn't have a child with a band member, but did live for a very long time with...
Who?
Writer.
Who?
Oh, shit. What is her name?
Is she a lesbian?
Yes.
Oh, she is?
Yes.
Huh.
Oh, not Toni Morrison.
Alice Walker?
Alice Walker.
I don't know who Alice Walker is.
The Color Purple.
Oh, okay. No wonder I don't know who she is. I hated that movie. First of all, it's the ugliest Oprah's ever looked. Second of all, I hated that movie.
Why?
I watched 3/4 of it. It's just, it's exactly the opposite of what I want in a movie. I don't want some emotional shit show. You know me. I want to see guns and action, and I want to see. I'm not into these. I also can't stand a story where there's a sad ending. And I knew it was coming. Can't stand it. I'm right in the opposite direction to me.
Sad ending. We were talking
Dogozo
about...
agrees with you, by the way. He says that The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill is a classic. Okay.
It is. But I do want to know what other albums people still, as they listen to them 30 years down the line, still feel like, oh,
I think we've got a definition problem here, because I think the albums you've indicated are the kind that you found to be those absolute pearlers. I think are the ones that mean the most to you. To me, it's about the quality of the music. And so from a musical point, I don't care
every song. I'm saying to you, every song on the album, you can play. You know how you play some albums, you like some songs, you skip some songs. I mean, play every song on the album from start to finish and love every song.
Tracy Chapman, I'm with you. But you see, I don't care that she was living with a woman who's a writer and then...
I only found that out a couple of years ago.
I know, but I don't care about that at all. I'm only interested in the music.
But is it no? What the definition is this? The definition is an album that each and every song on the album you can play through.
I can sing
no
the lyrics,
matter how many times, sing every lyric, and even as you play it 30 years later, it still evokes the same emotion.
I can still that happens for me with that Tracy Chapman album. But I think it was more of an effect of the time that I heard it.
Really?
Yeah, I was. How old are you in grade 5? No. Grade 3, 4, somewhere around there.
Yeah, but that is most impressionable times. Right. Kind of 9, 10, 8, 9, 10.
I remember the lyrics to songs that I heard at that age that I have not heard since. It'll come on and I'll go, oh my God, wow.
Oh God, here is another album for me that is perfect, song after song. And it's a soundtrack to Waiting to Exhale.
Oh, the soundtrack to the movie.
The movie. Song after song. This was Babyface produced.
Tony Braxton.
Tony Braxton is on there.
That's it.
Whitney Houston is on there.
Tony Braxton's "You're Making Me High" is still one of the sexiest songs ever. It wasn't on there though.
No, it wasn't on there. Oof. But also that's also like a 25-year-old
Unbreak My Heart
album.
Oof.
Perfect album. Song after song.
Got you.
Song after song.
So the Hoodshed says Jimmy Dlutlu's Afrocentric. I sing all his solos. Well, there we go. Hybrid Theory by Linkin Park, says Congo Chris. Not just great songs, but arranged as a melodic odyssey.
Linkin Park, Hybrid Theory. I don't think I've heard the whole album.
And Dogoza says, how about 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying?
Haven't heard the whole album.
Definition of he says, a classic album. Fleetwood Mac's Rumors.
Yes.
That's good.
That's good.
That's in
song
the top
after
there.
song.
I can't believe we're talking about music and we can't even play any in this stupid show.
But
here's a good
Joni
one.
Mitchell's both sides
Jesus.
now.
All right, well, see now this goes in the same category as all those sad movies.
But it's great.
I got you, but this must be a woman thing because I hear Joni Mitchell and it just I'm not a depressive, negative kind of guy. You know that about me.
Yeah, no.
I hear like the title track from that album. I've looked at life from both sides now. I want to fucking stab myself in the face.
Oh man.
Anyway, Joshua Tree, U2. Audrey, once I liked U2. I'm so off them. I fell out of love with them like I fell out of love with America. Amazing.
Really?
Yeah. Hanging Out with Jay, says Lady Gaga in general.
I have never heard an entire album by Lady Gaga. In fact, I don't think I've heard 3 songs by Lady Gaga.
No, you're not missing anything there. I also think, just by the way, like Lady Gaga is a very talented musician. She's extraordinary. She has a great voice. She's amazing on the piano too when she does acoustic versions of songs. And I do love her, but I don't think she's in this category yet. We need more time to elapse. Let's say that we've got a moratorium
but you hear
of at least 25 years.
But wait, but you also, the perfect albums, you hear it when the first time you play the album.
Yeah.
You hear it. You know that this is
for sure.
This is going to be.
Paul Drake says ELO's Time. Listen, ELO.
I have
great.
no idea who ELO is.
Electric Light Orchestra, Jeff Lynne.
Oh, okay.
Haibo.
I didn't know that it's ELO. Like I would have looked at that and go, who's ELO?
Dogoza says Rick Ross's Teflon John. Oasis, What's the Story, Morning Glory.
John Legend, Get Lifted. Legend. Yes.
No, I've never understood John Legend.
That album
Michael
was
Jackson.
amazing.
So here we go. Michael Jackson's Thriller. Got to be. If it isn't in your list, you're not listening.
Okay, because now you're bringing up Quincy Jones, Secret Garden. Is that it's called Q's Juke Joint?
Right. But pretty much
also perfect.
Let's be
from start to
serious.
finish.
Anything that Quincy Jones produced is streaks ahead of everyone else.
Listen, Quincy Jones has a Grammy for every year he's been alive.
Now that's a phenomenon. Truly, that's a phenomenon.
Every year he's been alive.
I'm just so proud of everybody in the comments for not bringing up Beyonce because that would have ruined the whole conversation. All right, let's talk about some other things.
Why are you people like this, Mara?
Well,
why are you like this? Let people enjoy what they enjoy.
They must enjoy it anyway. They didn't. I say so. Maybe I'm that canary in the coal mine that you need to tell you Beyonce is actually a shit singer. I've been consistent about this from day one.
No, I don't think she's a shit singer. I do think that a lot of the songs that she does,
she's never written one.
Don't allow her.
Oh, please.
Listen, have you heard Beyonce sing Ave Maria?
Horrible. It's like a cat scratching on things and meowing at the same time.
Okay, let's talk about something else.
All right, let's move on. Because I do want to tell you about Uncancelled.
Jagged Little Pink.
Jagged Little Pill by Alanis.
I have no choice but to hear you.
I mean, really, we're angry. That's a very angry album. I'm not sure I like that either. All right, so our next Uncancelled event is happening next week. The first one, of course, Unati Msangana came in. Unati Kai, as she is now, because she got divorced. She talked about her divorce. She talked about Her
I had
fight with
forgotten
Kaya.
about that.
Ooh.
I had forgotten about them Sengana years.
She talked about her fight with Somizi. She spoke about everything. She let it all hang out. There was no holding back, and we want you to be witness to the next one. We are going to get Professor Mamokgati Pakeng in, which
Mamokgeti.
Pakeng, who's coming in. She is, of course, the suspended UCT vice chancellor.
No, she's now gone.
Yeah, they paid her 12 million.
So not suspended.
Settlement.
Not suspended.
Well, she was suspended. Now she's been fired, but she's got lots to say. So they've tried to cancel her, but she's unbound.
Uncancelable. She is uncancelable.
That's it. So we are allowing you to come and join us for this one-off exclusive event. We're only making a few seats available, and we're selling the tickets at 150 Rand a seat. That price will get you a little snack and drink. So you're going to be a part of something very special. You also come to see our new venue, which yesterday we had a big party here for Tour Vest who came in, and it was amazing. It was like the best looking arrangement I've ever seen in this place. There were little umbrellas, balloons in the pool, snacks, good food. I mean, they weren't going shy on the food. Drinks, there was a little bar set up. Nice. I put it all on my Instagram. You can go and see it. It was really good. So we're going to do Uncancelled, and we want you to come. If you want to be part of this, send an email to us with your full name to contact@cliffcentral.com. That's contact@cliffcentral.com. Book your place today. It's happening next Thursday, and if you don't book now, you're going to find yourself stuck without a spot.
So after the show today, speaking of events here, I am going to be sticking around and waiting by the door to jump Lebang.
Why? What do you need?
Because it's Easter this weekend. And I begged Lebang to organize an Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, you better take that up with her.
I begged Lebang. This is begging. This place here, guys, has a garden that is begging for an Easter egg hunt.
I'll tell you, I can meet you halfway.
I'm going to jump her.
Cadbury's did drop off some ice cream, which if you are in the mood for an early morning dangerous decision, we can help you.
Is that even a dangerous decision? What is the decision that has to be made? There's ice cream. It must be eaten.
First thing in the morning. Sure.
No matter what time of day.
So come along. We want to hear from you. And if you want to be a part of this, just send us an email, contact@cliffcentral.com. It's happening next Thursday, the 13th of April, 6:30 in the evening. And it'll be Professor Mamokgati Pakeng, who's going to be our guest. There's going to be lots of fun. 150 Rand a seat. Contact@cliffcentral.com. All right. So we got lots of Kuningi files with Phumi. This is her thing now. We decided.
It's not my thing.
No, it is. You've given it a name. It's now a thing. Phumi decided last week there's too much that happens in this country on a weekly basis, and it's hardcore. We have so much going on. We've called it the Kuningi files now. So this includes all the things that have been going on that we need to clear the air with. We've got Mmusi Maimane coming in later on, so I don't want to jump the shark on this one. But we've got to talk a little bit about him and his party, BOSA. Is it BOSA? How do we pronounce that?
He will tell us, because I've been asking myself, is it BOSA? Is it BOSA? Is it? I don't know.
Yeah, we need to know how this works. So that's the for later with the burning platform. But the DA had their Congress and they re-elected John Steenhuisen. I think he got 83% of the vote.
1,361 votes out of 1,600 and something votes.
Not bad. I thought he would have more of a challenge, but clearly not.
Bona Mpho only got 287 votes out of all of that. That is wow.
It's a bit embarrassing for her, but
listen. The other lady, Lungile, what's her name, that was contesting everything. I didn't even hear her name being mentioned. She was there, up for every seat. She threw the seat for Helen. And then Helen went uncontested, got her role back as chairperson.
Which she defended on this show. Remember?
Defended.
Kanthan said to her, "Why are you doing this?" And she was like, "I didn't nominate
That's what
myself.
The people want.
The people nominated me." So Helen was elected unopposed. But you hear they want to maybe bring in a deputy leader, which they don't have at the moment.
How?
So if something happened to John Steenhuisen, something unfortunate happened to him, then the chairperson of the Federal Council takes over. That would be Helen.
That would be Helen.
But they were debating quite ferociously whether or not they should have a deputy leader, which I think is interesting too. So, I'm doing a bit of homework, Phumi. I feel like if I don't research these things a bit, you're going to leave me in the dust. So we got lots to talk about there. By the way, Musi says he doesn't want to talk about the DA, and I can't blame him. They don't exactly have much in common anymore. So we'll try and figure that out. And we'll get him to talk a little bit about his party. But I also saw an interesting comment from the Vryheidsfront Plus's chief whip on one of the TV shows last week. And we never really talk about them much. He said that people must not be fooled if these smaller parties, including the DA, say we're open to a coalition with the ANC. And they say that before the elections, then you know what you're in for. But if they do that after the elections, when one of the things they've promised you is that they won't be in coalitions with the ANC, and then they turn on you, that is a betrayal of the voters, which I thought was an interesting point. Because, often these politicians will make accommodations with each other, but the reason they were elected is so that they would not make accommodations with certain people. So I thought that was a very valid point that he made, don't you?
Well, there's a big talk going on, and we've been talking about coalitions for a while now. But what is the word of the week, in my view, here in South African politics, what John Steenhuisen has termed a Moonshot Pact.
Oh, yeah?
So I'll be very interested to hear about that. This was in 6 hours yesterday, this idea of this Moonshot Pact and who's in the coalition and who's not in the coalition. And
what is that? What is it?
So in John Steenhuisen's acceptance speech at the end of the conference, he spoke about a Moonshot Pact, a coalition of opposition parties to make sure that they keep the ANC EFF coalition out of government. That's what he said. That's all, because the EFF he has declared now as enemy number one to the DA.
Is that wise? Because they're really only 8%. Is he giving them the prominence that they want? Should he be focused on other things? I don't know. I mean, I'm not the political advisor to the DA, and I'm not going to become that anytime soon.
Moonshot Pact.
Okay, and then they're going to have to get a lot of those votes that we always talk about, the votes that have stopped coming from people who are disenchanted and feel disconnected from politics. They're going to have to go out there and find those people and drag them by the scruff of the neck to the polls.
And then there's a new Twitter account that's been going around. It's probably about 2 months old, this Twitter account. But in the past week, because of the coalition and the Moonshot Pact that John Steenhuisen talked about, this Twitter account has gone apeshit, guys. They then created a little graphic and with two halves. And on the one side, it's the Rainbow Coalition, which is the DA and FF and IFP. And when it started, the first one, it also has Action SA. It also had Musi's party, BOSA, BOSA. And it has Rise Mzansi.
What's that?
We've been trying to get songs. We had Lukhona Mngona.
But they're not a political party, are they? Are they?
I'm just telling you. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you what's in the graphic.
You're filling me in on stuff I did not know.
And then,
like Tracy Chapman being a lesbian. And this is I'm learning new shit every day.
On the left is what they call the Coalition of Corruption.
Oh.
Which is everybody else. It's ANC, EFF, Good. It is also Bongani Baloyi's new party. I'm like, why is he catching strays? He hasn't even told us what his platform is, and they've already lumped him as part of the Coalition of Corruption.
Yeah, we don't even know what his party's called.
It's called Shiloba.
Is this party?
Yes, it's called Shiluba.
This is one of the press conferences you watched.
It's called Shiluba, which is the Tsonga word for flower.
Oh, Jesus. Rainbow coalitions, flowers. Are there going to be any heterosexuals in politics?
Listen, and that has sparked a hell of a fight because then Songezo Zibi, who is the leader of Rise Mzansi, put out a tweet saying, hey, Chief, don't lump us in here with your stuff.
What happened to the Rivonia Circle?
So Rise Mzansi was what I think probably came out of a think tank. So I think Rivonia Circle is a think tank.
Okay.
And that think tank has birthed what Rise Mzansi is. They did put out a statement yesterday saying that they will tell us how they are going to proceed, what Rise Mzansi is, what its platform is, and how they are going to proceed by the end of the month. So just be patient.
Is Songezo going to be the leader?
Month end.
Okay.
Gareth, month end.
All right.
Yima, whoa. It's coming, month end. Right. But then Bantu Holomisa, UDM, has also been lumped in with the coalition of the corrupt, which is, I mean, really, why? The man, I don't think he's ever been corrupt. I mean, he was one of the first people that in the Free South Africa that was actually expelled out of the ANC. Mm-hmm. Don't think it's Julius. It was him. It was him. Yeah. He called out corruption, actually. He called out, remember, the Stella Stau and
because he knew how the Transkei worked.
Kersner.
Yeah. Right.
And Nelson Mandela said, Pandle. Mm-hmm. So he went and started the UDM. He wrote a letter, very stern letter to John Steenhuisen saying, don't come here with your big brother attitude telling us what to do. Anyway, it was my idea to have a coalition.
Well, since it is Thursday and we can talk politics and we won't be here tomorrow because it's a holiday, let's also talk about Julius standing up for the LGBTQ community in Uganda. Who knew he was a supporter of theirs? But Julius led a march to the Ugandan embassy because
draped in a rainbow flag.
Right. So basically, this is now you must know, for Julius to brandish these colors and to go to the Ugandan embassy, the Ugandans are really on their own on this one. I mean, what's your take on all of this? Or do you think it's Julius posturing again?
Well, it is Julius posturing. It is also Museveni showing. This is what happens when you have old people with no new ideas in leadership positions. And unfortunately, this is something we see all over the continent. It is Julius posturing, but it's also a very interesting kind of posturing because Julius is also a very big fan of Russia.
Yeah.
And Russia and Uganda have the same policies around LGBT.
But he doesn't have a problem with Russia.
No.
He has a problem with Uganda.
But nobody's asking him this. And this is all the stuff that, you kind of watch and you go, this is what I mean when I say Kuningi. Kuningi, Baba. It's a lot. There's a lot going on. And he did give quite a rousing speech, old Julius, over there at the Ugandan embassy. And he got quite a crowd. It was almost as much of a crowd as he got on the 20th of March.
Can you help me? The latest on the what's this criminal guy who we discussed last week? Thabo, what's his name?
Thabo
Bester.
Just when you thought it
what's the latest?
More bizarre.
We started. Listen. We started this like beginning of last week. Phumi came in with more information on the Thursday. I haven't caught up on what's going on with Thabo Bester, but maybe you can help us. So this is this con man.
Listen,
and Dr. Nandita, we got to talk about her.
You actually have to catch up every day. Every day you have to catch up a little bit because every day there's a new twist in the story, and every time it's more bizarre than the last. So 2 days ago, SAPS finally kind of descended on the now abandoned love nest of Dr. Nandita and Thabo Bester. And they were like taking pictures. They arrived in hazmat suits and everybody was like, what are you doing? Why are you here? A month after this whole thing, they left ages ago. What do you think you're going to find there? And then at the end of the day yesterday, Boom.
What did they find?
A dead body.
No. In the flat.
Not in the flat, buried in the back. It's not a flat. It's quite
house.
a big property in Hyde Park.
There was a body
buried in the back.
Jesus. So these people are properly evil. Or else the previous owners were. Who knows, right?
They were, because there were renovations, right? They were doing renovations, whatever. The speculation is that this is the body of their maid.
Oh my God.
Listen, do you understand when I'm saying this story keeps getting more and more bizarre? Because they're still on the run. We still don't know where they are.
Is unbelievable. The story is absolutely unbelievable. There are no two ways about it.
Fucking insane.
Right? And this is, if Netflix doesn't buy the rights to this, I don't know what they're doing.
Showmax better.
We were talking earlier about how I don't watch TV, and Phumi was saying it. But what's the show that you want me to watch?
Mafia.
What's Gold Mafia?
Gold Mafia is an Al Jazeera investigations documentary series. I think it's got 4 episodes. The first 2 episodes are now out.
Okay.
The first one came out actually last Thursday.
How do you have enough time in the week? You're a
There's a lot of time.
You've got your own business. You've got a child. You have. How do you find time for all of this? You also go to press conferences. You're at lectures. I mean, I don't know how you find all the time. And you watch TV.
I don't go to raucous parties. That's what I don't do.
I don't know how you find time for all this stuff.
Listen, you have to watch Gold Mafia. Because Gold Mafia, episode 1, starts out breaking down how Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe is under sanctions.
Yes.
How President Emmerson Mnangagwa and his ambassador at large, who also happens to be a pastor and has a mega church.
Okay.
He is called Pastor Angel.
Oh, well, that's a good name. It's very trustworthy. That's going to engender some,
So episode 1 is about the link between gold smuggling into the UAE and how President Mnangagwa and this Pastor Angel are running this like huge criminal organization in parallel to the Zimbabwean government, and millions of dollars, like tons of gold.
So what is this here? Because Musi even said, "You're a criminal, Ed Mnangagwa, and you do not deserve to lead a country."
So this he tweeted, I think, after episode 1 came out.
Oh, so this is from Musi, who's our guest just now. And look at this. President Cyril Ramaphosa, as a grey-listed country that is trying to remove the classification, we can't associate with thugs. Government ZA must immediately freeze any bank accounts these individuals have here.
Yay.
Yo.
This was after episode 1. Episode 2 came out last week, Thursday.
So who are these people who are...
Episode 2, my friend, is about how South Africa's role in this like gold smuggling, money laundering.
Jeez.
And the triangle is actually Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Dubai. There are some other African countries, but people at Standard Bank, people at Sasfin, people at Absa, compromised, being paid. There is a guy called Mo Dollar.
Yes. Mo Dollar. That's amazing. What a name. Oh. Talk about nominative determinism. And I'm not sure if it came before or after, but I love it.
After, because he was running some kind of, and it's his own brother in the documentary that is just like laying it all out there. It's like the Oriental Plaza is involved. There's like a 2-story business at the Oriental Plaza that operates like a bank that gets cash in and gives people fake invoices.
Wow.
Like, people collecting his ex-wife is also seen in the documentary talking about how she used to do the money run, and she would listen, illicit cigarette smuggling. So cigarettes, the cheap cigarettes that made a huge proliferation during the lockdowns, coming out of Zimbabwe into South Africa, and this is how the money gets circulated. Hey, Baba.
Doesn't all of this make you think again What does the NPA do? National Prosecuting Authority. Here, we're talking about this Thabo Bester case. We're speaking about this illicit cigarette trade. We're talking about all the other crooks and criminals that we've mentioned during the course of this hour, and there are a lot. And you wonder, what is the NPA do? Do people just go to the office in the morning and sit and drink coffee and laugh?
The fact that Al Jazeera, which for, I think, 12 months, maybe 12 to 18 months that they went undercover, secretly filming conversations and meetings with all of these various people. I mean, they've got them on tape. They've got Pastor Angel on tape. He says he's a prophet, but he didn't prophesy this coming. They've got him on tape saying, no, we've got number one. We've got the president. Don't worry about this. The president is on our side. We've got to just facilitate. We've got to pay this amount of money. There is also there's an Afrikaans guy who is just, he's swirling his whiskey and just like spilling the beans. Is talking about Gold Leaf, the head of Gold Leaf tobacco, which is all the cheap cigarettes, and how he is the linchpin in it all. He's the one that's the.
Do we know who this guy is?
Yes, Redland. Someone Redland.
Wow.
Yay. Like, just the first 2 episodes are so scary. They, like, his ex-wife, Mo Dollar's ex-wife, picks up boxes
Mo Dollar,
of dollars.
Pastor Angel. This is unbelievable.
Of dollars, boxes of US dollars from somebody. And they have a drone shot of Morningside. What's that? Not Morningside Manor, but that strip mall in Morningside, the one with Signature.
Oh yeah, the Morningside Shopping Center.
Is it shopping center? Yo,
I go there sometimes for haircuts.
So I'm just like, oh, so all these people you see at all these restaurants at 10 in the morning.
I want to know why that place. It's like a smart fine dining restaurant. It's open at lunchtime, and it's mostly empty, but there are always some people in there.
Yay!
Huh.
Suddenly, all this. So suddenly, all this Instagram flash that we see, the people in the Lamborghinis and the businessmen who you don't quite know what their business is, but they're businessmen. And the girlfriends and wives and the fancy cars.
Well, here's something new for you. Simon Redland is the guy you were talking about. He's going to sue Al Jazeera for all of this. He says he's not guilty of anything. The owner of Gold Leaf Tobacco Corporation, Simon Redland.
Hey.
Sure.
It is. You have to watch it. I mean.
And he was shot in his neck. I mean, what a story. Right?
Listen.
Yo.
Kuningi.
Unbelievable. This is all happening, ladies and gentlemen, on our doorstep. Huh?
In the malls you go to. In the malls.
Where we do our shopping.
The people you see every day, where you do your shopping. There are people on the streets of Joburg driving around with millions of dollars in boxes. And you thought it was bad that our president had dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in his couch.
The whole thing is like, it's like Helen said the other day, it's a mafia state.
Listen.
She's not wrong.
Yo.
Somebody says Shamila Batoy goes to work to play Candy Crush. I think that's about right. If you go to the NPA's office, says Carl, then you will see people just chilling and eating pizza. The P in pneumonia is more useful than the NPA. And somebody else called them the National Protection Agency for Criminals, NPA. And then Kanthan, who will be joining us just now, said, he's taking you on, Phumi lies about the raucous parties.
Haibo.
Please. I saw you at one last week.
Haibo.
On Thursday last week, I saw you at a raucous party.
Here my name is being dragged through the mud by my own damn friends.
All right. Well, we've got lots to get into. We will get into all of that in the Burning Platform. Stick around. Mmusi Maimane, our special guest, and we'll be joined by Kanthan Pillay online as well. You, of course, have a front row seat to all of this, and it's happening in the next few
people are
minutes.
asking about where to watch Gold Mafia. Just go on YouTube and just put in Gold Mafia. It's Al Jazeera. Both episodes, they're about 60 minutes long each. Both the full episodes are on. And tonight, then either tonight or tomorrow morning, episode 3.
Sure.
In this saga.
We got things to see, people. I've got to make a playlist again. Start writing down all these series and all these investigations.
You've got a long weekend.
I do. I actually have time this weekend.
You've got a long weekend.
I think I will.
Coming up.
This is a good idea. I am doing one interesting thing this weekend. I'm flying down to Durban on Saturday to give the inaugural lecture of the Pixley Kaisakaseme Foundation in KwaMashu, which is a very cool thing that they invited me to do, and I'm thrilled to be doing it.
So are you going to film it? Are we going to see it somewhere?
I'm sure we will make it available in some way, shape, or form.
Fantastic.
But I'm really excited to be doing that. Of course, Pixley Kaisakaseme, a very foundational person in the liberation movement, a person who way ahead of his time was standing up for the not just voting rights, but the civil rights of Black people in South and Southern Africa, and a man who we've done extensive work on in Blind History, which is why they heard about it and heard about me and decided to invite me. So I'm looking forward to that. That's pretty much the only thing I have to do this weekend. Everything else will involve watching all these shows Pumi's told me to watch. So that's my whole weekend plotted out.
Yeah.
From beginning to end. All right, we'll be back in a moment with Mmusi Maimane, The Burning Platform, and a whole lot more.
Every time you listen to that 80s show, Tom Cruise lives another 10 years. Every Friday on CliffCentral.com, Paolo and Dory review movies, reminisce about old songs, remember childhood places that are now car parks, and say some outrageously rude things about Patrick Swayze's brother. That 80s show, new episode every Friday, live or as a podcast on CliffCentral.com.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
What do you think is best between petrol and diesel? Very, very, very simple question. With the most broad answer, we'll answer all the, potential answers. But in your opinion, what's better?
So diesel is the most efficient fuel.
Yeah.
In terms of burning it in a vehicle, right? Yeah. It's to my understanding more energy dense than petrol.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
All right. It is just about time for the burning platform. And man, oh man, do we have lots to discuss today. Phumi Mashigo and I are here to keep you company and to hopefully open up some of the discussions. I saw tweet that you wanted us to highlight from the electricity minister. And again, this is Mmusi Maimane, our guest this morning, but it says here, from Times Live, Electricity Minister Josienso Ramakgopa says load shedding will not be ended through an act of God, no matter how many prayers.
But you know what an act of civic outrage has done?
What?
It has reversed the decision by the Minister of Finance to exempt Eskom from disclosing.
I saw that.
Amongst other things, wasteful and fruitless expenditure
At
in
Eskom.
their financials.
Right, because they were going to be given a reprieve.
It's not an act of God, but it is an act of civil outrage.
Uh-huh.
And also the state of disaster.
State of
been
disaster was
lifted.
yesterday called to an end. I didn't even know it was still on. Did you?
No, but it was the state of disaster for Eskom. Remember, this was specifically for Eskom. That this before the Minister of Electricity was appointed. Why are you? But Gareth,
No, but I remember
Gareth,
when.
What is this?
Listen, this government. Hey, Kanthan. This government of ours.
Hello, Baba.
They declare a state of disaster or emergency or whatever it is, and we're not even sure what the terms of that are, and then they keep it going for as long as they want, and then arbitrarily decide they're going to end it.
Gareth, they had 2 weeks between the time they declared it and up until now. What was stolen in that 2-week period where they were outside of scrutiny? That's what we need to look at.
Is that what you think it was? Just an opportunity to steal?
Absolutely. A legal opportunity to steal.
So, I mean, when last did we have one of these state of disasters, and what was it for? Was it when the riots happened in KZN?
Well, it was over the lockdown. Remember when lockdowns were declared, we were in a state of disaster.
Yeah, but then there was
And so the looting in KZN happened at that time.
So it was the same state of disaster.
In the same state of disaster. But you
Sure.
want to talk about looting in KZN?
Yeah.
Do you know what we're not talking about? We're not talking about all those COVID funds that were looted.
Oh well, I mean that's
All those COVID
that's
funds that
hundreds
were
of millions.
looted.
Yeah.
We've forgotten about that as the Republic of General Amnesia.
Phumi has decided to do Kuningi every week. She said there's enough news for us to talk about all of this stuff every single. Are you getting cold there, Phums?
Apparently so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. When you two have settled down,
But
then
I come prepared, you see?
get into
Guys,
it.
can we just, before
I'm not
Musi
fighting
joins
with you
us, can
about
we just
the
talk
Yes.
about Gold Mafia very quickly?
Yes, of course.
What do you
go.
want to say?
The fundamental issue around Gold Mafia, and people actually don't get this. The reason why Gold Mafia exists is because Zimbabwe is sanctioned by the United States. They're not able to legally move wealth out of the country. And they have to keep the country running. Zimbabwe is not poor. Zimbabwe has the means of feeding itself. But Uncle Sam wants to punish the country. And so they have to find ways around the US sanctions. And that's why these entire ecosystems develop out of nowhere. Look at the big picture, guys. Look at the big picture. Jeez.
All right. Okay. So you think that involves the tobacco guy as well, and all this skullduggery by Emerson Mnangagwa's.
Well, the tobacco guys, again, remember that
Angel?
the reason why they're illicit is because there's an outrageous arbitrary tax on tobacco and on alcohol. I mean, if I buy a bottle of VAT 69 now from Ultra Liquors, I can get it on special for as low as 139 Rand. Out of which 70 Rand is tax.
Sure. That's a
Okay,
good point.
so you have every reason from a point of view of profitability to smuggle those cigarettes. Why would you want to sell it at 50 Rand a pack? And, this is a thumbs up because I haven't bought cigarettes in years. Why would you want to sell it at 50 Rand a pack for a 2 Rand profit when you could sell it at 25 Rand a pack for a 10 Rand profit?
All right, you make an interesting point. And obviously this falls into that much bigger conversation that you're always pulling us towards of the changes of, with the changes in global politics, particularly with what's going on in the US as compared to what's going on in China and India and Russia. and the fact that the world is moving away from this unipolar look and feel that it's had for the longest time. But we'll have to pause that for a moment. I do want to welcome our special guest this morning. He's come in specially. You were in Cape Town yesterday. We were worried we weren't going to see you, and you're here in person now. Mmusi Maimane, how nice to see you.
Hey man, it's so good to see you, and thank you so much for having me. Yeah,
well, it's a pleasure. Nice to have you in the studio. It's been a long time since we had you in the studio.
I know. I had to find a new GPS location.
Moved this way.
This is sent in, you know.
And we've got lots to catch up on. I mean,
Sure.
you've been really busy. So, what happened to the original One movement that's now become BOSA? And is it BOSA, or must we say BOSA, or like?
No, BOSA is cool.
Okay, is BOSA all right?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us what's been happening.
So when I left Parliament in 2019, I always wanted to work hard to make sure South Africans can actually connect with democracy. Because I actually think part of the flaw with this country is that you and I, as we sit here in Joburg, we don't even know which member of Parliament represents us, right?
Mhm.
That's a fair point. So I went out. We spent the last 3 years. Obviously, in the first year, we went to the Constitutional Court to fight for the amendment of the bill so that you
Independent candidates.
Yeah. And people also say it's independent candidates, but more than anything, I wanted a constituency system because I actually, at the end of the day, still believe that democracy is served best when politicians are accountable to the people and the people that live with them. That's what I really mean. So we went and spent time. The Concord ruled that Parliament must amend the law. We spent the last 2 years submitting the bill. That was OSA. And then they came up with this bill that really was like, look, guys, you can run the Comrades Marathon, but if you want to represent your community, you must run backwards with no shoes.
Right.
That kind of thing. So they
No
made
money, nothing.
Nothing. No,
Right.
like impossible. So they made it impossible. And then we felt, okay, if we truly believe in ideas and we believe we've got a great vision for this country, we've got to be able to practice it. So I went out back to communities. I said, anyone who wants to represent their community must stand under this platform. So we built Build One South Africa as a political party. We put it on, we registered it with the IEC so that we can challenge not only for democracy to be closer to people, but to fight for our 10 ideas that we say these things are opposite and crucial for this country. So that's what happened.
All right. So first of all, I mean, Kanthan and Phumi, any comments on this constituency-based system? Because we've often had conversations about it. The fact that party lists come in and people, in the party are just assigned place on the list, and they get into Parliament, and then they're not really accountable to anyone except the chief whip and, of course, the party itself. And what Musi's done here this is a big deal, and I think it's made our political landscape that much more accountable and a little bit better. Agree?
Yeah, it's an interesting conundrum. And look, Musi, you're absolutely right in terms of the fact that we don't know who our constituencies are and who we hold personally accountable for these things. The issue that we've had, when you have a parliamentary framework, shall we say, that's not based on proportional representation, is that gerrymandering then kicks in. And as soon as gerrymandering kicks in, essentially what happens with gerrymandering is that you redraw constituencies based on where a party is able to command a majority. So now, very simply, if we happen to have had a constitutional democracy that was represented by constituencies, the ANC would have redrawn the map so that all of the opposition parties would have effectively been wiped out, which is what we see in many countries north of the Limpopo. So the proportional representation system that we have is, essentially a compromise that that kicks in. But the flaws are, of course, that you cannot hold individuals personally accountable for representing your interests. So now that comes to the interesting point of, do we allow individuals to then run for parliament? Well, I think that that's a very good idea in principle. The problem, of course, is that when you have a couple of 100,000 people running for the National Assembly, how do you then put a couple of 100,000 people onto a ballot in order for them to be able to, A, find their candidate, and B, tick off their names on the box? And it just becomes a shitstorm of note. And now, there's some people might say, well, let's do digital elections. And we all know how digital elections can be manipulated as well. because when you don't have an actual paper trail. So I'm saying that I don't know the answer to this question.
In other words,
Okay.
you've been completely unhelpful, Kanthan. Thank you. That was a point. Thank God we didn't trust you with this problem.
but also, guys, I think one of the things that we're fucking with a system. Sorry, this is Muruti. I know
it's before Good Friday, so at least you've got time.
No, but we have got quite arguably a constitution which is not just the newest, but also a brand new spanking shining car that has been created for a world that we are living. So proportional representation, theoretically, what the parties should be doing is they should be getting their party list from the constituency, right? And what we're trying to do is we're trying to break this constitution that has been thought through and put together in a different world, and we're trying to make it an old state of working in the Constitution. The Constitution, guys, was, and okay. We're wanting to hold on, and we're wanting to change the rules of the game, just as the one party that we all agree with is losing the game. Now you want to change the rules and allow them to change the rules to work for themselves. That's what we've done.
Can I continue your analogy? You said it's a shiny new car. It might have been back in, 92, 93. I'm worried about that shiny new car. We've been driving it on our pothole roads for such a long time now. I think it's starting to fall apart. And really, the Constitution, while it may have been a document, and I was one of the people and continue to be one of the people who regard it as a triumph, unfortunately, the people we've entrusted to be the guardians of this Constitution, politicians, by and large, have let everybody down to the point where now trust is at an all-time low in politicians, and people are transferring that lack of trust in politicians to the Constitution. They're blaming the Constitution.
Sure.
So you see them blaming, they're saying the Constitution is the problem. This is the problem, the obstacle,
But changing the rules of the game as they are losing the game is only going to prejudice anybody else that is in line to win.
But let me say a couple of things so that at least so on the first score, I'm not sure I agree entirely with what Kanthan is saying in terms of gerrymandering doesn't always adversely affect the opposition. Actually, in this instance, it may have an additional benefit because, in essence, that's how coalitions work best, right? So suddenly we decide, in Ulundi, IFP is the best party there. You can then coalesce and say, everybody pull your horses back, let the IFP guys stand there, we're going to support them. So that's the first and more important thing about a system that's a mixed system where you've got proportional and you've got constituency, because then you can really coalesce better. On the second issue, you wouldn't amend the Constitution to achieve this. In fact, the Constitutional Court in its ruling just simply said, amend the Electoral Act, which is... So the Constitution remains as it is. The Constitution has got some if I wanted to amend the Constitution, I would then go ahead and say, directly vote for the president. That's a constitutional amendment. But everything else is within the law. On the third issue is that we know if you do the maths of the bill that we've done, the NC would lose 6% almost immediately, because once you rechange what a constituency-based system is, you strengthen. That's why the NC struggles at local government. It struggles because people directly elect someone. And then I would argue more strongly, the rules as we have them now, let me give you a real example. MPs works like school terms. They're already allocated constituency periods. In those constituency periods, what do those people do? In essence, you pay people to just continue their party work. Instead of paying people to say, Charlotte Maxeke down the road here is burnt down. Come answer. Tell the people what's going on with this thing. Or potholes in Johannesburg. Maybe that's a local government issue. Let me talk about national government issues. The schools in South Africa, where young people are passing at 30%. Hey, BOSA, come explain to us what's going on here. So instead, we now give politicians money for constituency offices, because we really did want to change. We already give them money for it. We've already set up constituency offices. Instead, they end up being party offices. So to me, I think as voters now, we are being screwed both ways. Let's just be honest. We're being screwed by a system that doesn't hold people to account, and we pay for them to continue. We are at a greater loss as citizens. So this is a fundamentally important issue that was even conceived in 94 so that we achieve this.
Musi, I just want to climb in there for a second. Let's just talk about the Electoral Amendment Bill. Now, we're aware that it was passed by Parliament last year. The President has still not signed off on it. So, we're a year ahead of the next election. We still don't have a proper electoral framework in terms of what we're going to vote around.
Yeah.
What's your understanding of where the state of play is right now with that?
Sure. I mean, where the president sits with the bill is that there are some issues of constitutionality in the bill. So it'll go to the Concord anyways, I suspect, because as I said earlier, it makes the rules nearly impossible for anyone else. It's prejudicial. And so I would argue the bill as passed is malicious compliance with the Constitution. But here's my political tactic. Let me say this. I think this is where the president is playing for. The ANC knows that going into an election with load shedding as an issue is going to be harmful to them. They know that. And they also know that their solution is not to fix ESCOM. Their solution is that more people take themselves off the grid. Because if we're discussing 6,000 megawatt shortfall for baseload, more people as they build their things, you're starting to chip away at that number. So with every passing day, you are getting to a stage where actually you can get to stage 2 load shedding and less than that. So the president is gambling. In my view, I think the president wants us next year to delay the elections because they're given 90 days additional referees optional time if you follow football. They can be given 90 days after the term ends so that they can delay to get towards a place where the grid is stable. They can then call for an election knowing that people are not going to go vote there to say the lights are off, we are voting you out.
Can I ask that we speak a little bit more deeply about your party because we have you here, and
a lot of people are asking. So let's do that.
I think, and I hear all of the electoral changes and all of that stuff. I'm very interested to know that coming out of your past political life, what have you learned that you think is going to change BOSA's fortunes going into this new?
No, thank you for that, because actually, I mean, when I left, as I said, the first lesson was that democracy needs fixing. The second lesson was people, when we sit here in the studio, we may not all share common ideology, but we share common values. And I want to advance this idea of Ubuntu. And I know the term has been used.
Oh, it's so hackneyed now.
Yeah. But let's not lose track of the fact that we have a shared humanity and a common threat. Why that's important is because in a country that also wants people to be polarized on the basis of race, that people want to divide us. And when I talk about build one South Africa, my fundamental argument is that it is possible for citizens, regardless of race, regardless of where they come from, to be able to really get behind one view and actually share and support a candidate. The third thing is, I learned that politics has failed because we lack ideas. I sat in parliament for 5 years or 6 years. And when I was there, it became quite common to me that we weren't discussing issues of people. So my other big lesson is that I had to go back and really engage citizens and say, what are the 10 things that we can talk about? And you mentioned one of them is electricity, but we've spoken about education. We hardly talk about education in this country yet. It's like the next ESCOM. We never talk about, and so we've put out this 10 big ideas. We say we want a national venture capital fund so that we can fund micro enterprise. We want to make sure that the state acts as an underwriter for healthcare. We want to bring security down from national so that the police are not operating under Minister Pegicele, but they come back to local communities and you can aggregate those with private security and volunteer forces so that we've got greater police presence. I spent quite a lot of time saying, let's advance this idea of radical centrism. Let's get to the middle where people are at and draw on the best ideas so that we can go forward. And even on the energy thing, we've worked on solutions. We've worked on how we can change education to give parents vouchers so that they are at the forefront of choosing where their kids can go to school. So it gave me 3 years to rethink, one, what I'd like to see in this country. It gave me 3 years to really get over the past because I think it was hard. And it gave me 3 years where ultimately I feel emboldened to say more people can work together to achieve what's great in this country.
What do you mean the past was hard?
My final year, I think in 2019, was probably one of the hardest in my life, just personally, because the politics just became so toxic. The issues...
I can help you with that. Get off Twitter.
He'll never get off
No,
Twitter.
Twitter.
No, you've been busy on Twitter. We'll get to that just now.
But you know, effectively, you know, I'd given a long time, a lot of my life, 10 years to the DA. And I thought towards the end, the things, the divisions, the pain, all of that, I needed time just to detox from that. And I'm grateful that the last 3 years have been that because I didn't want to come back and replicate a type of the DA or a type of the ANC. I really wanted something new that will work for the next generation of South Africans. Because we can all look to yesterday and we can celebrate the ANC, the DA, all of those parties. But what I think South Africa needs and what the global community is teaching us is that something new is taking countries forward. So, and let's take Lesotho. You might say Lesotho is a small country, it doesn't even count. But Sam Matakatsa is now prime minister. They started 6 months ago, won an election. Hakainde Hichilema, a very good friend of mine in Zambia, is now the president. They started UPND, a new vision for forward. Nelson Chamisa in Zimbabwe has started ICC, something that takes us forward. In the international market, you look at people like Emmanuel Macron and how they took over a change. I think the global system is changing. So to me, I've had to get into that and get excited about it. Still today, here we are. I mean, 10 years ago, this would be in a different studio. This is a new world.
You still are like good at giving a positive vision, which I'm not hearing from anyone else at the moment, which is kind of disturbing. They're all talking about each other the whole time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You listen to most of the parties, they're talking about each other. And I'm not getting any kind of positive vision from the ANC. It's all just like, there's nothing wrong here. Look over here, you know, and old stuff that we're over. But I do think there are a whole lot of things to unpack and unpick here, because a lot of people think that you kind of started this because you didn't have an option. There are other people who think maybe you're doing this because you like the feel of politics and you want to stay relevant. I mean, I'm just pulling stuff off the internet. I personally, I think the more the merrier. And we need people with ideas. I couldn't agree with you more on that front. But what is it that's driving you? Like, what would you really like to do? Would it be ideal if someone said, cool, we'll vote directly for president, and it happened? Let's say it by some miracle. It even happened by 2024. Is that the position you would run for?
Absolutely. In fact, I've got the shirt. So if you've got the shirt and the logo, you're in, right? No.
I'm just worried that if your jacket closes, that could look like Busasa. And that worries the hell out of me. Okay. So.
But you know, in truth, look, on the first is one of the other nice things I did in the last 3 years is that I went and got involved in business. So we set up a fund that helps fund started up businesses. So that was fun. We got involved with, because I must be honest, when I was writing laws in Parliament, I didn't understand all what happens in business. So I spent quite a bit of time trying to understand that, trying to understand communities. So I'm coming back with a better tool set. And why I say that is because there's a danger upon with politics becomes careerism, or those two things become synonymous. People can't find work elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
The last 3 years, I'm just about nearly done with a PhD in microeconomics. So I've really felt I'm useful elsewhere, if I could say it like that.
Most politicians are not. Let's be honest about that. If you took a lot of those MPs and even our cabinet ministers, you gave them no public money to live off of, they'd find it very difficult to find employment.
So
Phumi, you disagree?
Listen, people have got teaching diplomas. People have got, don't take people lightly here. People have got teaching diplomas. Just because they're currently ministers of police doesn't mean they can't go and teach.
Exactly.
Oh, Jesus.
So when I was done with all of that, I think, but you say, what's the play? You know, Gareth, I've got 3 kids. And in truth, we're a mixed race family. So, right, my wife's a white South African. We've got 3 mixed race kids. So we faced this problem. One, when I looked at the ballot, I thought, there's no one to vote for. Honestly, I looked at it and I thought, that's the first thing. The second thing is I thought to myself, if I lived pre-94, say I lived in the 60s, 70s, and I thought something was heinously wrong in the country, with all the career, with all or whatever, knowing apartheid was an evil system, would I have marched? And hypothetically, if I think I would have, if I sit here today, honestly, with a country that I drove the other day with my daughter past UCT, I said to her, maybe one day you'll go here. And then I realized maybe UCT may not exist in 10 years, or she may not be able to find a job, or whatever, or she may not feel safe. At the risk of sounding selfish about my own kids, in truth, let's be fair, guys. This country ain't going in the right direction. So I said, let's get back and fight.
All right. A lot of people in the comments want to know, Mmusi's a good guy. His challenge is going to be scalability, says Ken. He needs a strong number 2 and financial backers. V. Ruiz says, if a politician just said, I will do nothing, then I would vote for them. The more they do, the more damage they cause.
But the ANC already ticks that box. I mean, that's why we've got Ramaphosa there, guys.
Ruiz, you've got a party to vote for.
And then Congo Chris says, critically, 27 minutes into the platform, still no clear policies. How do we address homelessness? Does BOSA prepare a welfare nanny state? Is that what you propose? How do we reduce tax and the cost of living? Big or small government? These are the things he wants to know about.
No, I hear that. And I think a lot of people want to get into one on a couple of things. I know the issue of homelessness is a serious one. Part of it is we must understand it for its fullest sense, right? Like, why are people homeless? The couple of things. The first is, if you live in mega cities, the net in-migration into cities because of economic opportunities is higher. That's true for Cape Town, that's true for Joburg, that's true for KZN. And as a net effect of that, and I'm not, the couple of things that I need to suggest is we need to, and I know there are many aspects to fixing this issue. I know you can provide shelters. I know you can provide a voucher system for that. But actually, I happen to hold, which is what I did my master's in, is you've got to fix the transport infrastructure. Why that's important is because sometimes someone who sleeps under a bridge in Rosebank is doing so not because they can't find, not only because they can't find a home, it's because they are underemployed. It's too far for them to get to work in Rosebank, and actually they're spending a ton of money in transport. 40% of citizens in this country spend, the people who work in this country spend 40% of their income on transport. You can't have that. So imagine if we had an effective transport system that meant that people, even though people might live far from cities, but to get into cities where work opportunities was easier, it makes that whole solution possible. To the question about, that's why earlier on I was speaking about what excites me is about the 10 big ideas that says, no, it's not about creating a nanny state. Actually, when I mentioned this whole idea of a national venture capital fund, is because I truly want citizens to be empowered to be able to prosper across all platforms. That's why I mentioned that. Okay. That's why I mentioned this idea of a voucher-based system, because ultimately I give citizens their right to choose. The ideological polarization, and I'm going to say this here, and I know there'll be haters out there. They're going to say, Musi, but you are talking about a world that's post-ideological. I happen to think so. I happen to think that we've come to the critique of both capitalism and socialism at its highest level. I think now we've got to find a new way. We've got to find a new way forward.
So speaking of
hang on. I need to climb in at that point, Phumi, because this then ties in directly with what's happening at the geopolitical level right now. So let's talk very directly about the seismic shift that's happening around de-dollarization, about the fact that BRICS is now the single biggest economic bloc in the world. So BRICS is bigger than the G7 countries, the collective economies put together. There is a shift happening north of the Limpopo where all countries are now turning their eyes in the direction of the East and in the direction of Russia. Where do you stand on that? Because if you are saying we are moving to a post-ideology world, if we are moving to a scenario where the hegemony of the United States and its allies is in rapid decline, And how does that then reconcile with your very principled standpoint on things like Zimbabwe, for example?
Sure. I mean, I think the question maybe leans itself into the idea of how you put your foreign interests and foreign policy to a certain extent. And I take lead from two pillars that underpin the future of where we go. The one is trade industry in interest. So despite the fact that there's a global shifting towards the East, in truth, for example, the EU, if South Africa, the South African president, now if I talked from that platform, the EU countries are still the number one largest investors in this country. Okay, China is fourth in this instance. And in terms of various collaborations, foreign direct investment, we still discover that we have trade ties with the global West and the EU. So that's on one space.
Declining, rapidly declining, I must say. And also,
let him finish.
Remember, no, I must correct points of fact. China is our biggest trading partner right now. India is soon to, absolutely.
India
CIA World Factbook figures. Go for it.
All right, fine. We'll read that, but I disagree, and I can show you the.
I'm sorry, my facts are going to get in the way of your feelings, Mmusi.
Okay, if we proceed on the second issue, is that what we can't also do is, whilst you may pick East or West, we mustn't also denounce, and you're correct, you asked me the question about Zimbabwe, we mustn't denounce issues of human rights, for a fact. So yes, where we sit in the de-dollarization, as you put it, I'm comfortable enough to say, let's focus on our trade interests. Let's understand what our investment criteria look like and what our objectives are, because everyone is doing that. And
sure, but what are your investment criteria? Tell us that.
Yeah, mine is to look at, for example, my major support even about the BRICS member states. If I think about where our economies is going to grow, particularly in areas of fintech, etc., I do think our partnership with India needs to be strengthened for the future. But that's not only an exclusive market. There are other markets that I look at. We can look at issues of energy and how we diversify that going forward and understanding where Africa and its continent sits. So I look at issues of digitization, of energy, environmental friendliness, and how as Africa, we can leapfrog the developmental curve of where other European countries have gone. And so there are massive opportunities in that regard. So I'm not married to anyone, I'm married to South Africa. And I'm saying, let's identify our interests and charter a path along that way. That's my focus. So to the last point, which is what do we do in Africa? So on another last point is that there's intra-African trade that's not been stimulated sufficiently. And I think there's a massive opportunity there. So in a continent that's got 1.2 billion people, at least projected in the next 10 years, with Nigeria growing, surely as Africa and South Africa, we need to be thinking hard about how do we intra-trade and export goods, certainly within the continent. That's a massive opportunity. So to me, if you said to me, Mmusi Maimane, you become the president today, I wouldn't be wanting to go, let's pick winners and losers. I'd be going, what are the interests of South Africa? What are economic demands? What are skills demands?
I mean, it sounds practical to me. So, for example,
that's it. I'm a pragmatist.
So, for example, we have coal. So, environmental concerns, because we're a developing economy, should come after coal. We need to use coal. We don't have enough electricity at the moment.
Well, 67% of our energy provision is given by coal.
And you're okay with that too? Because I am.
Of course.
I'm saying like we got to use what we got.
Anyone who thinks that
when the US says they're going to give billions of dollars here so that we will go to solar and wind and water.
Not going to happen in the next 10 years.
Right. Bullshit.
That's a fact.
Right.
That's
I'm with
fact.
you. Okay, good.
But also when we talk about issues of environment, we have completely different issues in South Africa as to what, the global north has. We have issues of water and water scarcity. And those are the things that if we're talking about climate, we should actually be looking a bit wider and thinking about our ecology and what it means for South Africa. There are many things
Agree
that
with
we
you.
should be
Our
looking
biggest
at. It's
issue
not just about,
yeah, I'm with you. You wanted to ask something though,
flying,
and Kanthan hopped in. You wanted to ask something about BOSA.
Yeah, you speak about Ubuntu and you speak about shared humanity and shared visions and goals. I'm interested to know if you got the letter to come to the convening on the 15th.
What's this letter, Phumi? Just remind everybody.
It's the moonshot.
It's the Moonshot Pact. It's
Right,
my
so-
word of the week.
This is what John Steenhuisen has proposed as the anything but the ANC and EFF coalition.
There's a gathering happening on the 15th. Have
Are
you
you
got
going?
a letter? Because your logo was taken off the coalition of the Rainbow Coalition.
Well,
yesterday.
that's what I noticed that.
Did you?
And I
Are you
noticed
sad?
that I wasn't invited. Well, let me say a few things. The
They
first
didn't
thing,
invite you.
you know, and I'm not. Look, I think anytime people want to work together, that's an important thing.
We're going to need to at some point.
Correct. It
But
needs.
yeah, I think this is an important thing that Phumi's bringing up here. Like, how deep are your wells of willingness to get involved in coalitions, and what are you and aren't you prepared to do?
I led in 2016, right? I led the coalition, Jan Joburg, Kabeja, Tshwane, and all of that. And by and large, I think we demonstrated that they can work. They work on the basis of being able to develop a plan that you are able to say, here's where the thing is going. And they work if the national leadership is willing to get over its own issues. I mean, there were days where I can tell you, I used to fight a lot with Bantu Holomisa, and he knows that. But we'd walk out. He sometimes has walked out of my office, but we still had to fight hard about what we got to do. And today, him and I still remain good friends. So at the end of the day, you require the high level of maturity. So even in a typical sense, you know, so for example, we were put in the thing, now we're taken off. That kind of immaturity doesn't help. It's not going to help coalitions. You need to be mature in leadership and be grand enough to be able to go, I'll work with people. Some people I don't agree with. Julius Malema and I don't agree on many things. But he's playing a part in South Africa. I have to engage him. Corne Mulder and I disagreed on many things. But he's a South African and I need to engage in the way it goes. So the coalition conversation, one, I think is important. Two, I think we need to do it and we need to get it right. But three, it needs a sense of which there's a shared respect and shared values that sit in the room. So 2024, I've checked my inbox. I've refreshed, nothing. So I suppose I'm not invited. But lastly,
so are you big enough to show up even if you're not invited?
Well, I don't know where it is. I don't like to show up at.
Okay, get your inbox.
Oh, please. but let me just say this one last thing. The conversation has been had. This is not a new conversation, right?
Uh-huh.
So I've been meeting with opposition leaders to have this conversation. So let's not make this moonshot thing a new thing. It's not. It's actually, people have been having conversations, and I can show you.
What?
We met a couple of times with political leaders, opposition leaders, to try and chart our way forward. That's on one score. On another score, it can't just be a coalition of parties only. We have to bring society on the table.
All right. What do you think is going to happen in the elections next year? Because this is the question everybody always asks people who they think are connected and who know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know more than I do. What do you think is going to happen next year? Where do you see the parties lining up? How well do you see the ANC doing, or how poorly do you see them doing? Who do you see as the coalition partners who might be able to make a go of it? And what are the percentages in your head? As they are now. Obviously, a lot can change.
In my head, I think the ANC will get somewhere mid-40s or 45 or so, 40, somewhere there. You know, and a lot can happen between now and next year. I think, you know, I was with my sister yesterday. I was in Dobsonville, and they said something. You know, my sister says, she says to me, we don't only just deal with electricity problems. Now we deal with repo rate. I thought, Soweto now, repo rate has become the new issue. I thought, that's beautiful. Because actually, she's using coded language for inflation. I think the cost of goods is going up. I think the hustle culture in this country is well entrenched. So I think life's about to get hard. So I think the ANC is not going to survive that. You can survive many things. You can't keep people poor. So that's on one score. The second issue is, I think parties, a lot in the next 3 months, will guide whether or not this big rainbow coalition will in fact itself deliver the sort of aggregated plus 51% percentage.
Because they need that. Otherwise, it's a fool's errand.
So there's a lot of work that's going into that exercise, and I think it's an important work. And then lastly, I think come next year, it depends. The established parties will get what they've got. I think it depends entirely on what entrants like myself or anyone else does. I hate to sound all grandiose, but frankly, I'm playing this game to understand that we're playing for Champions League. I always say to people, you know, if you follow football, you play for the top 4. You're playing in there. And more than anything, we've got to be in the room to make sure we can anchor the coalition as it
How
goes
are
forward.
you going to get people who are totally disenchanted with the political system, who are not voting, that huge proportion of people in this country who have so much at stake but have given up on politics. How are you going to get them to vote for you?
And that's exciting. So 6 months into the game, right? We are launching. We've got a very strong digital platform. So Twitter is but one component, but we're launching a type of discovery rivalry app that will make sure citizens who don't participate in politics in traditional sense, they are not branch members, they are not going to be vivering, but they want to participate in the process. So 6 months into the thing, we've got a digital platform that allows us to do that. Secondly, we've set up structures in all 9 provinces, which for 6 months in, I think is pretty good. We've got an executive everywhere and they're going every weekend recruiting members. Thirdly, I'm excited about the fact that when we raise issues in communities, because for the first time ever, remember the other thing, you talk about independence in 2021, we've been able to call all of those people back because they bring their communities. Because why people don't participate in a democracy is because they don't know who they're voting for. Whereas in local government elections, they found somebody, they said, oh, here's Musi, he lives in Dobsonville. Let the people of Dobsonville vote for Musi in that sense. So that re-engages the politics in a different manner. So that's been quite exciting to get people animated around that. And then lastly, so to the scale question, I feel now we've got a product. If you were using business language, we've got a product. We've got distribution channels, we've got digital infrastructure, and we raise the sufficient enough capital. I think we can scale up quite quickly. Favorability of messengers, that's another thing. We're bringing new people into politics. So one of the things that is sad for me watching the political landscape is that if I slept in 2019, woke up in 2023, still the same players.
People.
So to me, that sounds a bit stale in many ways. So the exciting bit is, I can show you, my deputy leader, Nobuntu, is a businesswoman in her own right. She's a powerful woman. She's come into play. We've got a number of people, Kusta Jack, who was a business person in his own right in the Eastern Cape. Biela, who is a phenomenal entrepreneur from Unilever, used to be there in KZN. And I can go country, province by province. We've got radio DJs who are standing in our list. We've got former ambassadors. We've got people. So what I'm trying to say is that don't try and sell stale bread to people and make it fresh. What you've got to do is go out and sell.
Musi, but you're the leader of this thing. Are you not stale bread trying to be fresh?
I'm the only politician maybe in the room often. So there's a lot of that you've got to understand and work with. And I've had to spend some time almost as a recovering politician to try and rework what I think, what I do. And so I may be old in the politics, but I certainly have got new ideas going forward. And I'm not nervous about that. There's something that has had to happen in my life to take the time to rethink things and to work them out.
Kanthan, I know you're burning with some questions. This is the burning platform. Take it away.
No, I'm not going to actually be burning with questions. I should just give some historical context here in terms of when I met Musi for the first time. This was years ago when I was running YFM.
Yes.
And at the time, Musi was campaigning in Alex, and I was out there in Alex watching him. He was on the back of a truck in like an old style township preacher, which I suppose you are, Musi, when you get down to it in brass tacks. But he was just stopping random people walking through the streets in Alex, and he was pointing to a woman who was walking by, and he would say, you've got a child, I've got a young child as well. I think it's wrong for rats to be running on the streets here in Alex. And I called him on to, we were running at that time, a kind of, sort of like a TED Talk thing at the Hyatt Hotel, where we'd invite people to come and give a talk for about 20 minutes and then take questions from the audience. It was a black tie affair, fairly highbrow. And I remember asking Musi at the time, before he gave his speech, I said to him, but your pedigree is, you're from Soweto, you're a Dobsonville boy. Surely your ideological home should have been within the ANC. And he made the point that if he was that he had considered joining the ANC, but what that would have meant is that he would have had to stay as a branch member for the next 40 years until he eventually got escalated to a point where he could physically do something. And the reason why I'm telling you guys the story is because I think there's a lot of people out there who have the sense of frustration that they have the ability to contribute something to fixing the country. But the way in which the political structures are designed right now doesn't allow people to actually inject those ideas into the political mix. So I think that I sense some of the frustration that you've still got to this day, Musi, around trying to bring that to market, so to speak. I'm not entirely sure at this point whether what BOSA or any of these new players that are coming. Phumi, you were mentioning earlier that our former mayor of Midvaal is launching a new party as well. We're increasingly seeing a fragmentation of the ideas rather than a coming together of the ideas, coalescing under a single platform. And I think that all of this is going to play to the ANC's advantage when we go to the next election. I don't agree with your prediction that the ANC will drop below 50%. In fact, I think the ANC will maintain its better than 50%, simply because I believe there are fewer people who will vote in the next election than did in the last election, because there isn't enough messaging right now around driving people to get to the polls to have something to vote for. I don't know to what extent right now you're able to come up with messaging that's going to persuade people, A, that they need to get to the polls, and B, that they need to be voting for you or voting for BOSA in this case. So just tell me what's wrong with my analysis as a starting point, and then how you intend addressing that.
So there's a couple of things. One is, a strange thing happened and is happening. You would have been at the Mall of Africa over the weekend, and young people organized themselves to get there.
Organized. Phumi told me about these guys. What do you call them?
Latweezes.
Latweezes. I happen to think that is an indicator of the fact that, given the appropriate message, young people can be mobilized to do something. So
you don't just think it's a representation of terrible parenting.
Nah, I think sometimes we miss the language of young people.
Okay, all right.
So Kanthan, to your point, Rona, my organizing message, if you were to say, what's your MAGA, to use a bad statement, for us is to genuinely fight to put a job in every home. That's the tagline. We want to put a job in every home. So, and the economic message, that's what this country actually is about. I agree with you that sometimes it feels like everyone wants to start a party. But where I'm worried about all of that is that there's a genuine, sometimes misunderstanding of the political problem in this country, because we speak on so many different platforms. We speak as elites and we understand the problem from one angle. But actually, for the person who's sitting at home, the citizen who, for them, honestly, I'm convinced, despite what the ANC's institutions look like, I think that given the appropriate mobilization funding, citizens have had enough. It doesn't matter where I go, in any community, people say this one permanent thing to me. I got such a beautiful analogy. Someone said to me, Mr. Maimane, I bought chicken pieces. Load shedding has meant that they are now going off in 2 weeks. Now, that's a different level of poverty that I think this country has to grapple with. So whilst I might be eloquently describing the problem, I do think more than anything, people are desperate for new solutions. And our work as BOSA is not that we're going to get 51%. That's not what I'm going for. But I want to be playing for that Champions League slot so that we can be in the room when the country asks the question, who should be the president here? We can have a far sober conversation.
So what's your polling telling you about your prospects?
Actually, quite good. Actually, we will effectively, if we running a good campaign, we are already in the double digits. So that's a start, and that's what I'm going for.
Do you? What do you think of that, Pums?
No, I you know how I feel about polling. I love polling. We're always talking about polls here. And that's why my question is really around polling, because I think it's about the questions that you ask. And so the answers that you get really are about the questions that you ask. I think...
But Musi, I still want to know what your MAGA slogan is. What is your MAGA slogan?
He said a job in every home.
A job in every home. Okay, right. That sounds like the Ronald Reagan slogan from the 80s. A gun in every holster, a pregnant woman in every kitchen, make America a man again.
No. Let's make South Africa grow again. No, but the truth of the matter is, So if you look at favorability, that's another indicator, right? There's only, at this point in time, just from a polling point of view, only one other politician who's more favorable than I am. So in other words, your haters and your losers, they cancel each other out, and then you decide whether you're net positive or net negative. And the only other person is the president. So we are coming into the race not as novices. And that's where, to your earlier question, you having come into the space, there's a lot of big school fees to pay to get recognition across the country. And I'm grateful that we've spent, as a brand, for people, there's a fairly universal, broadly speaking, people given the names on the list, they would know Mmusi Maimane.
So speaking of school fees, who's paying?
That's the tough one. We've got to raise money, and I keep telling South Africans, your 100 rands buys us one vote. So put it in the pot.
It's not like Cyril Ramaphosa, 100 rand will buy you a vote. So I need to ask you about this, because there are a lot of people in the comments who say that they like you. You sound like you know, someone who they could trust, and they've heard these messages from you before. You've been consistent about that, but they say race politics always comes into this stuff. And with your, you know, you've been here for a considerably longer time than some. You've been making your contribution both in the DA and outside, now with your own business, your own party. People want to know what your stance is on race politics. If famously there was a thing where you said, no, well, your wife may not be able to help it, but she's guilty of white privilege. I had Mudzuli, who at that stage was your spokesperson on the show here once. And when we'd finished the show and I thought she'd done a pretty damn fine job of acquitting herself, it became on social media that I was this white monster who was, I mean, it really left a bad taste in my mouth. Is race politics going to play a part in your campaigning?
I mean,
and I'm just taking it from that side. You know, people are going to go, well, you've said this, you've said that, because you've said a lot. You've been in the public eye for a long time. It's like me. I get held responsible for stuff I said 8 years ago.
I think I'd be hypocritical of me to say I want to build one South Africa and make that the party and make that the issue, and then lose track of wanting to say, to use Kanthan, the Republican saying, which is, we all do well when we all do well, actually. So I am interested fundamentally in prosperity for all races. I believe that, regardless of what goes on in this country. But the second part of that is, I think, to identify race in an individual is not to be racist. We make that mistake. Someone who says, well, income between black and white South Africans is 6-1, and you state that as a fact, people go, you see, now you are getting into racism. No, you are recognizing a history where we've come from, and you are saying all of us have a duty to fix. All of us, black and white. Because freedom can't just be for the oppressed. It ought to be for the oppressor. So my point is, race features as a function of going, if we truly believe in a South Africa for all, can we work hard at addressing injustice where it occurs? And can we furthermore work collectively to build a shared prosperous society? And those values I've always held on to. And I recognize. So let me talk to my kids about this issue, because they have questions. I take them to Gogo in Soweto. They have to answer the question, why is Gogo living in Soweto in these conditions? And I take them to Granny in a different community. They have to answer those questions for themselves. I don't try and hide away from the fact that we have a history that meant that there was segregation. I don't hide that fact from them. But I invite them, like I would invite my wife, I'd invite anybody, to say, let's work together to try and address that. That's why it's important that we set up a Jobs and Justice Fund. That's a way of addressing injustice going forward. That Jobs and Justice Fund will ensure that where students who can't gain access to higher education can be funded, particularly black students who come from poor communities. These things are important. And then to come back to the last issue of Ubuntu, which I think was some of the reference behind the conversation you had with Mudzuli, I think we can never... It's important to acknowledge the dignity of all human beings, and always, that is one right in the Constitution, never can be taken away, ever.
No, I know, and I still maintain.
And so sometimes...
I maintain that in that
until we amend the Constitution, of course.
No, sure, but in that particular conversation,
majority.
You know, I probably could have handled things better, but the central discussion was around the local elections at that point, which was really what people were interested in.
Sure.
There'll be other times where we can hear about people's stories and their experience and their lived experience and all that stuff. And it's not to say that we're not interested, but I think that there's something else that you haven't got to yet. And I do want to hear your thoughts on this because it's an area where I'm sure it's an easy answer for you, but we need to deal with all of these crooks. And I heard from somebody this week who's now living out of the country, a very, very smart legal mind. He said to me, we need to establish a circuit court that has sufficient funding, get the best legal minds, and set up a corruption court, essentially. Say to these people who've stolen money, you have 3 months amnesty. Come forward, tell us what you've stolen, and you won't have to go to jail. We're going to take most of that back because it's not yours, but you won't have to go to jail. If you don't come forward in these 3 months, we will come after you with everything we've got, and we've got a lot.
Yeah.
And then let's put people in overalls. I mean, do you agree with that?
Undeniably.
Good.
Undeniably.
Good.
Otherwise, we're going to create a system where people who... Corruption has become so... It's happening everywhere. And part of the real issue is that we are now privatizing... we think that, public leadership and public office is a side hustle. The main job is elsewhere. So even if you go to the Home Affairs, the person is incentivized to think that if the system is down, at least I can go to other people in the line and say, let me help you quickly and give you a VIP section. That's another form of corruption that's occurring. It happens in the private sector. I mean, I think we can't deny the fact that there are a lot of people who have corrupted equally the system. I agree with the special court. We've called for it permanently. But where I would go even a step further is that the SIU legislation and all of that gives the president the power to call more than one special investigator unit. And I think if you asked for legal minds to volunteer their time so that we prosecute
they
quickly,
would.
I think you would have a mass rally of people coming on board. And ultimately, you could get yourself to a point where people must know you cannot tolerate corruption.
All right. Kanthan has asked if he can have the last question. Is
Of
that
course.
okay?
Yeah, in terms...
Are you
You've been
tweeting?
very quiet.
No.
You're not going to give us some boring story about how you and Musi met at the Hyatt.
No, Musi, the fundamental question, going back to race, which we were talking about right now, and this is really my litmus test in terms of whether people are taking us forward or not. Would you outlaw black economic empowerment?
I would change it fundamentally.
Well, but how would you define race in that case? Because we don't have a population registration act that actually defines us on the basis of race. Would you go back to pencil tests as we did during the apartheid era? How would you define race?
Well, what are we trying to address here? We're trying to address justice. So I don't need to define race because the Constitution is quite explicit about self-identification. But let me take a student, right? I want to lean into different things. So if a student says to me, my parents never went to university, as a function of history. My parents never went to university. That's a fact.
Neither did mine. And we're different races according to the Constitution.
So at the end of the day, I've got to make sure that if there were economic circumstances that forced that condition, I will fund that student to go to university and I'll pay for it. The way we recoup the funds is to make sure that we have a tax system at the end of it. But some of these things we got to lean into because we're fixing a injustice here.
But that's a question of that's poverty. That's not race, surely.
No, but that's a historical legacy issue, which is born out of race.
But we need clarity on these things because we're going to be deciding that certain people get things and other people don't, which is precisely where all these horrible ideas in the 1960s under H.F. Verwoerd came from. Is like, let's categorize and classify, and it becomes very dangerous.
People do that themselves. Where I think there's a secondary danger to maybe the point.
But I mean, some people are classifying themselves, self-identifying as women when they're men. I mean, this is complicated, right?
Of course, all of these things are. But where I'm very nervous is when we then head into this direction that says, no, it suits us to be colorblind.
No. But if we're going to have any policy at all, is BEE the right one?
No, I've maintained that view. And that's what I'm saying. I will change it. I will change it to put a jobs and justice fund and focus on the idea of justice in order to build one. Because let's be fair. If I go to Khayelitsha as an example, that's not a township for poor people. It was a township designed for black people and it's poor. So I can't sit here and say, well, I'm going to be blind to that fact and be colorblind. I've got to say, how do I use funding so that I can address that historical injustice
See what
by
you've
building
done, Kanthan.
infrastructure?
We were having
and putting it there.
we were having a perfectly nice conversation, Kanthan, and look what you've done.
Yeah, but the
this is what I wanna
nitty gritty is what matters. Go for it.
So that's the war. The war is, but again, Gareth, this is not being pernicious to anybody. It's not about sitting back and going, well, by virtue of, it's about actually, if we want, we will never know peace in this country until we confront the question of justice. I think that's
I just like people to study history. If people just studied history, we wouldn't have half this trouble. They don't. They don't learn it.
We're like over in our time, and
Yeah.
I'm grateful that people are still listening.
Yeah, I would have loved to be here longer. Yeah.
I'm grateful that people are still listening. So I will ask you in 60 seconds, you've got a 10-point plan, but if you could pick only one thing that you would do all the time that would lead us to the right path, as you say, what would that be?
I'll put a job in every home. But in 60 seconds, actually, to put a job in every home is about, let's keep the lights on. We'll have to do that permanently. Let's fix all our logistics. Let's make sure goods can move in and out of this country freely. Let's make sure everyone is safe, because actually you can't work when you are unsafe. And lastly, let's make sure anyone who wants to start a business in this country can get the appropriate funding to get there. That's why I want a venture capital fund.
Cool. Musi, thank you very much for coming in this morning. It's good to see you, and it's good to actually have you have some time. We don't have to go to commercial breaks every 5 seconds
and sound bites.
Sound bites. Yeah, they come to you. So what do you think of the State of the Nation address? You got 2 seconds to say what you think. So we will do this again. And I wish you luck. I mean, I think that you've already done some incredible things by taking this constituency system to the Constitutional Court. This is stuff that will, I think, be written into history as being tremendously positive moves forward for this country. And there are many more that you will probably make. But in this morning's show and this morning's discussion, we've run out of time. Thank you, everybody. We will see you on Tuesday. Have a good, happy Easter weekend.
And to all Jewish South Africans who celebrate Pesach tonight.
And Ramadan's coming to an end soon, and all of it. So it's all
everybody's
Holy Week.
Everybody's doing something. Everybody's doing something.
All right,
this
everybody.
week.
Have a good week.